Alright, so with the newest update to Warframe bringing a new frame, new changes to exalted weapons, and new arcane mods that can give certain frames crazy potential, I have been playing the game a ton since then. Granted, I always play this game a ton. All that said, I decided to make another video on one of the frames that benefited. So after a poll that I immediately disregarded due to supply and demand, I'm going to be doing Hildryn for this next overview. Before anyone says something, no, I am not making the joke. Anyone who has two eyes and a brain in the gutter already knows it, so I'm not going to say it. Anyways, aside from being a fan favorite due to her raw power and other reasons, Hildryn here is a beefy support frame that can take damage, deal damage, and grant unique support to her team to give them just that little nudge into enemy lines and hoping they do more than stand in a jade beam thinking they're suddenly a god. Also, since I now have the confidence to say I'm actually good at this game I sold my soul to, I will try to show more of how to use her abilities since I usually just tell you stuff you already know from the game's ability descriptions. So starting with the most clear part of Hildryn, she has no energy. That's right, this monolith of a frame has no need to go finding blueberries because she has her shields to charge her abilities. This has a ton of interesting interactions with her kit as well as her arcanes and weapons. Now, this doesn't mean energy is completely useless to her. First, she can benefit from energy conversion, which is great because with 3 out of 4 powers being channels, this means she is getting a permanent 50% buff as long as she keeps them active. The second is one I don't think many people have actually noticed with Hildryn. Energy orbs restore her shields. It's hard to say how much they restore since she regenerates shields so fast she makes Gauss cry himself to sleep, but it's something to keep in mind. Now on to her passive, because the fact she uses shields is not actually the passive. Her actual passive is that she has a naturally longer shield gate than any other frame. While most could slap on catalyzing shields, Hildryn has a 3.5 second shield gate duration. And during this duration, her shields start to recharge, since unmodded they only take 1 second before they regenerate. Not much else to say here, it's solid and helps her be more of a tank than she already was. Hildryn's first ability is the Balefire Charger. Once activated, she summons a sort of wrist cannon that will drain a bit of shield with each shot, more so if you charge the shot first. It has some decent damage on its own, but since the recent update, the wrist cannon just got even better since now it can have secondary arcanes. Most arcanes should work for this, but the ones I would recommend are Secondary Enervate if you run Aegiscale, Cascadia Overcharge if you play her mostly on the ground, and Cascadia Empowered if you build it towards status. The Balefire Surge augment is kinda redundant, so what it does is that landing a fully charged hit with her Balefire will restore 250 shields. But her Pillage already restores much more shield at a much faster rate, and she doesn't even have to aim. Okay, what about how Surge also instantly pops Nullifier Bubbles and gives Hildryn 750 shields for doing that? Okay, but her Aegiscale augment can decimate the bubbles, the enemies within the bubbles, and doesn't require a charge time. Sure, she can get shields back, but who needs that when she can just press 2 and get into overshields instantly? I would say it has no real use as a mod. Pillage is the button you are going to be pressing constantly. It sends out a wave that strips enemy armor and shields before giving it to Hildryn as shield and overshield. This is what makes Hildryn a nigh unkillable frame, not to mention it wipes status conditions like her fans wipe their browser history. Because what's the point of having 7,000 shield if poison can just bypass it? There is one more thing to this ability. Its range is more so affected by your duration, which sounds weird, but that's because the range it shows on the stat screen is its initial range, and the duration is how long the radius travels for. This means anything in a Russia-sized area is getting around 25% armor stripped at base. Now, I have heard some people say that because Hildryn can't strip 100% with a single cast, that the ability is automatically trash. Which, I just have to say this one little thing. It costs nothing to use. I refuse to allow this slander when you can just recast it a second time, and any cost it had is just instantly refunded. You get a half strip at 200% along with status cleansing and instantly getting overshield for no cost. And I run with negative efficiency. Do you want to know how much of my total shield it costs to cast Pillage? Less than 3%! It costs 6% of my total shield to cast it twice for a full strip, and even then, I get it all back. And this isn't even an account for the overshields I would get from the first cast. Hildryn does not give a single iota in regards to how much Pillage costs. Okay, we good? Good. Blazing Pillage is a band-aid augment for Pillage that is mainly meant for her to work in infested missions. When you hit enemies with both Haven and Pillage, they get set on fire and Hildryn gets some shield for each enemy hit. Pretty solid. Unlike Balefire Surge, I actually see this having a lot of use cases outside of just infested missions. You can use it after you strip the group to keep shields up and add fire damage. You could use it with the new Arcane Hotshot to gain crit chance on her Balefire Charger or other weapons. You could use it for Condition Overload. Or you could use it to get more out of it because apparently no cost and incredible benefits isn't enough for you, you stupid piece of sh**. Okay, I'm good. Moving on, Haven is an ability you will probably have on at all times. It gives nearby teammates a boost to shield generation, shield capacity, and even Hildryn's own shield gate passive. This works on other objectives like rescue targets, defense targets, and the drones in open world bounties. It also does damage to enemies, but no one cares about its minuscule 200 radiation damage. But having it alongside damage from her weapons and her Aegis Storm may be more appealing. Actually, something I noticed in testing to make more of the damage of Haven is that it actually staggers enemies on occasion. It seems a bit random with how often it occurs, but still good to know. Oh boy. Prior to the Kome update, there were some choice words about Aegis Storm. Back then, Hildryn couldn't use Pillage in Aegis Storm, so it was just her Balefire Charger, and Haven. And all Aegis Storm gave that was slightly worth it was an AoE suspension field that locked enemies in place, and tons of energy orbs. Other than her hidden energy to shield mechanic, she had no use for Aegis Storm because you lost the best ability and her Balefire was just as good on the ground despite seeming like two horseshoes are better than one. So, what changed? First, Hildryn gained the ability to cast Pillage within Aegis Storm. She also now automatically pulls out her Balefire Chargers when she activates Aegis Storm. And now when she runs out of shield, she slams enemies into the ground and deals some pretty decent damage. These changes actually made this ability somewhat worth its use her for, but there was one more thing that she got. Aegis Gale has turned Hildryn into a Flying Dutchman of pure terror. It makes it so while in Aegis Storm, Hildryn's Balefire gains a new alt fire that rapid fires 4 fully charged shots that gain bonus damage scaled off Hildryn's max shield. Notice, by the way, I said max shield, so she doesn't lose this bonus when her shields get low. For me, this bonus sits a little under 3,000 damage, and honestly, it's hard for me to drop because of this. So, time for what you all wanted to know. How do you play this behemoth of a support? Prior to her light rework, I would have said stay on the ground and just spam Pillage. Now though, I would say never touch the ground. Hildryn's Aegis Storm has become so good now that it makes her this attack chopper with the armor of a nuclear fallout bunker. As for her actual survivability when getting shot at by anything her fork can't stop, that would be where Aviator and Aerodynamic come in. Both of them reduce damage taken while in the air, and yes, this applies to her Aegis Storm and stacks with her shield's innate 50% damage reduction. If you do run out of her shield, use the invulnerability phase to grab energy orbs from her 4 and cast out a Pillage so you can get that shield back. Now let's talk about modding. My standard build on Hildryn involves buffing the crap out of her shields and ability strength for Aegis Gale. Then there's little into range and duration. As for efficiency, just no. Hildryn gets so much shield back that you can just use Arcane Barrier and Aegis, and even both, and she just never runs out of shield. As for her Balefire Charger, I mostly built it for damage, multi-shot, status. Though it isn't the best status weapon, I did put Prime Fulmination on just so it gets more blast radius. I also have Cascadia Empowered on it, since with its range and 28% status projectile it has currently, it is triggering that bonus on enemies during most, if not all, of its explosions. But Secondary Enervate is also a solid choice for Aegis Gale, given you get off multiple hits per volley. Hildryn has been a favorite frame of mine since even before her buff. I find it kind of funny, given most of the other frames I like aren't tanky, as if this guy and this guy aren't enough of a hint. But Hildryn is one of those rare exceptions, not to imply I'm opposed to tanky frames. But I really like her as a frame, and no, not for the reason you degenerates like her. She's a solid frame now, and there really isn't much room to improve with her. Maybe make other augments more appealing? Anyway, I need to end this video off before I start ranting about the hate on Pillage again. Will I make another video in the next month, or wait a year? Who knows? I will see you guys later though. Goodbye.